Hello friends and welcome back to my channel. Today, you're no longer friends, just temporarily though. We are going to go back to school. Yes, call me Professor Glory because today we are going back to school to learn pricing crafted items. What may work for you, what may not work for you. If you don't know who I am, hello, my name is Glory and I crochet stuffed animals for a living. I've been doing so for the past 2 years, and so I know a thing or two because I've seen a thing or two, as State Farm has once said. So without further ado, let's dive right in. A lot of crafters don't know what to do when it comes to pricing, but nobody really knows what to do. I've gathered a couple ways that other crafters have decided to base their pricing on, and hopefully you'll gain some knowledge along the way. The first thing I've seen is pricing based on, you guessed it, hourly rate. Hourly rates are nice. We're so used to typical 9-to-5s and hourly rate jobs that it's just nice to go back to something that we already know. The pros of this, of course, are that you are always going to have a set base price. So if you make things or create things that you're able to consistently make on the same amount of times all the time, then I think that this would work for you because you're able to really consistently keep the same amount of time that it takes you to make the same thing over and over again. As a result, you're able to keep up with how much per hour you're getting paid per se. Now, of course, the cons of this is the fact that if you are not a crafter who can make the same thing in around the same amount of time, like maybe it takes you 2 hours to make a bracelet one day, but it actually takes you 30 minutes to make one the next day, and then 50 minutes to make one the day after that, and then 10 hours to make one the next day, then this is not for you. What may be for you, however, is the next tip that I've seen. Pricing based on supplies. Not supply and demand, just supplies. How much it costs to make your thing, and just double that or triple that. For crocheters, since I'm a crocheter, typically I've seen a lot of crocheters charge by yardage yarn amount. So for example, I've seen crocheters charge about 20 cents per yard amount. Now you'd be like, Glory, 20 cents per yard is crazy. It's not though. If you have a ball of yarn and it takes about 120 yards per ball and you use 2.5 balls, if you multiply that by 20 cents, you'll actually gain about $60 on your calculator anyway. You should. But $60 for something that takes up 2.5 balls of yarn is pretty good, don't you think? Now, of course, the cons about this are that this is not a great way to charge if you're a person who spends a lot of time making your craft, but you don't spend a lot of materials at all. This is a great price point gauge. However, if you're an artist who spends a lot of money on supplies and you want to be compensated for that, and maybe it doesn't take you as long to make art with the supplies you have. Like if you're a traditional artist and you use very expensive paints, this is definitely going to be for you. But speaking of expenses, that's going to go into my next point. Pricing based on supply and demand. The ebb and flow of capitalism, if I do say so myself. Class, you're never going to escape capitalism, as long as we're alive anyway. Some crafters take that to their advantage. They'll charge based on how many people really want a certain product, and they will simply raise the price from a base price that they've already set. Now, of course, the pros of this are that sometimes they'll make a little extra money in your pocket on certain seasons. It's like a fisherman that sells fish gets a lot of money during the summer, that no money during the winter, because there's no fish in the winter. They're all underneath the frozen oceans, probably. Hopefully, with climate change, we'll still have frozen oceans, but I digress. The cons of this, however, are that you're gonna have to bring your prices down to meet lower demands. And sometimes this can hurt us as artists emotionally because, funny enough, our art actually is a piece of us. I know, it might be shocking to some of you, but our art is a piece of us and we're selling a piece of our work to people. And so to see this piece of us gain a lot of popularity, but then slowly dwindle down, and you have to accept the fact that it's dwindled down by bringing down the price point, it kind of makes you feel a little sad inside. Class, you have to remember that you are a human being. You, yes, you, a Homo sapien. Feel feelings. I'm pretty sure Barbie said that, I think, or someone said that. But this is one of those price point gauges that is definitely more emotionally charged than the other ones, because you are pricing it based on how many people really like it this time and how many people don't really necessarily like it. Another way that I've seen people and crafters charge alike are pricing based on skill set. Now, some crafters see other crafters charging per hourly rates, as most of us do. Theoretically, as you're gaining more skill, it should technically take you less time to make something that it used to take you longer to do before. So some artists see that and they're like, I shouldn't have to charge less because I am better. In fact, they argue against that. Because you've gotten better, you should charge more. So people thus charge based on the skill set that they have. Now, the pros of this are that you have like a good incentive to get better at your art. You know, besides an intrinsic incentive of just being a better artist, you're able to get extrinsic benefit by being able to justify raising your prices. Now, of course, the cons of this are this price point gauge only really works well if you have a strong fan base and already make pretty unique crafts. If you don't have both of those things, or at least one of those things, then it's going to be pretty hard to justify raising your prices based on arbitrary things such as skill. Unfortunately, another con is that skill is something that's kind of hard to measure. So it's hard to tell whether after a year of change, you should raise your prices because your skills increase. Because like I said earlier, class, we are humans, Homo sapiens, if you will, and our growth is not a linear growth. It's not even exponential. It ebbs and flows like a sine graph. And so because of that, it's not always necessarily true that you grow your skill set by an exponential amount or even an amount worth putting monetary gain on, if that makes any sense. What I'm trying to say is that skill is something hard to measure. And because it's hard to measure, it's hard to put a measure on money, on something that's already hard to measure in the first place. The last way that I've seen people price point is just by looking around. Now, the more appropriate term is just mean gauging. By that, I mean, you may be starting out as an artist, just selling your work out into the wild, selling pieces of you, tiny pieces of you out, and hoping that people grab them and resonate with them. But you may not necessarily know how much to price at all, or any of these other random things that I just talked about a couple of minutes ago. You can look on Etsy or all the other artists' websites and see how other artists are selling similar items for. And then you just take the mean of that. So like, for example, if you go on Etsy and you're selling a crocheted bunny and you see similar crocheted bunnies, one for 60, one for 75, one for 68, one for 63, you may charge around 65 just starting out because that's just the mean, the general average of everything that you've seen on the market. This is just basic marketing, guys. I mean, probably actually. I don't really know. I'm not a marketing major. I'm just assuming that this is probably how basic marketing works. Now, the pros of this, of course, is that you are betting basically on other people's knowledge to your advantage because you're just starting out. You're hoping that these people who have sold more than you understand that what you've just created will also sell for around the same price. So you're just kind of banking on that. Of course, the cons are you're banking on other people's price points, but those price points are specific usually to those people, but they're not specific to you. Just because you made a crochet bunny doesn't mean that it is worth $60. It may have taken you 10 hours to crochet that bunny because you're just starting out. Whereas the prices that you saw on Etsy, it only took them 2.5 hours to crochet the same bunny that you made. And that's why they're charging prices that you've decided to tack on. The price doesn't necessarily reflect the skill, time, and effort and supplies that you necessarily put. So it's not the best bargain overall. However, I'd recommend this price point gauge to a crafter or an artist who is just starting out. They just want to put a price there just to see what happens. No time to think, really. And then you can do the other thinking later. Speaking of thinking, I've been thinking a lot about pricing because a lot of us are scared to price our crafted goods. And you don't see this type of scaredness in like really any other niche, you know, besides like other niches like baking and cooking and such. Ultimately, every piece of art that we are selling is a piece of us, a piece of our soul that we are showing the world and saying, here is a piece of me. I hope this resonates with someone, and I'm putting a price tag on it. I might be going too deep on this class, but I would argue that that's what art is overall. Of course, it can be nerve-wracking when you sell pieces of you and nobody necessarily wants to buy, and you think that the first thing is because of the price. But class, let me advise you, that's never it at all. Okay, well, that's a lie. Sorry about that. I hope you didn't write that down. That's just our inside voices talking to us. There are many factors that cause people to not buy or purchase any of the art that you're selling, but it's not always the price. Class is over. I hope you enjoyed this cute little video, just a little chatty video. I know I've been holding this cup full of tea that I have not sipped once. So I hope that satisfied some of you guys. I charge based on amount of time, and on some certain items, I charge based on skill. For example, I'm working on custom orders right now. Me, Tabby Cat, and on custom orders, I charge a little bit extra because of the skill that it takes and because of the supply and demand that I've reached. A couple of weeks ago, I opened my custom orders again, and I reached over 1,500 people requesting custom orders for friggin' pets. I was like, goodness gracious. I can't even get to those if I tried in a decade. Nevertheless, a year. So of course I did have to charge more as a result. I also charge based on time for my typical in-store plushies. I always tend to crochet around the same consistent time for the same plushies. The timing that it takes me to crochet it doesn't change. You don't need to stick to just one pricing point. You can use multiple pricing points. In fact, many crafters do. But let me know your thoughts. Did you agree with anything I said? Did you not agree with anything I said? Let me know your thoughts, because I am just one person with one perspective, but there are so many of us out in the world that have different perspectives, and I want to hear your thoughts. But with that being said, guys, have a great rest of your day. If you want to support me in any way, of course, I have all of my links in my bio, including the yarn that I use, my custom order form that will be opening next week, as well as my book and my Patreon, where I host monthly pattern clubs. Please eat water, take a break, have a nap, an 8-hour-long one, preferably since it's nighttime where I am, so I'm assuming it's nighttime where you are too, obviously. And have a great rest of your day. Bye.